I've heard homelessness described as a problem, as a crisis, even as an epidemic. Help us understand what kind of crisis or epidemic homelessness really is.
Homelessness in California, especially in Los Angeles, particularly on Skid Row, is an epidemic of epic proportions. It is a FEMA-like, Red Cross-like disaster, and it needs to be treated as it is.
Wow. Wow. So why do you use the word epidemic versus just a problem?
So there are 40,000 people living on the streets of LA County.
That's a whole town.
Yeah, there are 2,500 people living on the streets of Skid Row. They share now 13 toilets.
Wow.
When I lost my leg, it was 9 toilets. And people use the sidewalks as restrooms. Last year I said that we never turn away a woman or a family with children because there were 800 registered sex offenders outside on the streets of Skid Row. The mayor's office called and said, "Where'd you get that number?" I looked it up. I had to call back and say, "I'm sorry, it's 1,084. And last week I looked again, and it's 4,700 in the zip code around the Union Rescue Mission on Skid Row.
Almost 5 times as much.
Yeah, in just a year. And so violence against women, violence against everyone. If you study AIDS, it was created in the early 20s and 30s in a very similar area in the Congo as to Skid Row. High drug traffic, high sex traffic, lots of transition of people.
Yeah.
And we are actually setting ourselves up for that kind of a plague in LA. We have a particular type of TB found only in the world on Skid Row.
Wow.
We had a hepatitis A epidemic last year. We've had a typhus epidemic going on right now. It's been in the news. And I lost my leg from E. coli, staph, and strep flesh-eating diseases because of waste that's on the sidewalks of Skid Row. And it happens to people every day, right? It happens to people who are devastated by homelessness every day.
Yeah.
But when it happened to me, it embarrassed the city, and they declared a state of emergency. When I finally told my story, city councilman called, excuse my language here, but he called me and he said, they declared a state of emergency. City councilman called me and he said, "Andy, today was all about you. If Andy Bales can't frickin' walk down the street and preach the gospel, we had to do something."
Wow.
And so that's the level of devastation of homelessness in LA, and it's everywhere. I told people who were on the flight with me late last night that when you get to LA after being away for years, it's not on Skid Row. It's not just on Skid Row. It is everywhere. Tent encampments everywhere. Skyrocketing rents have pushed people to the edge, and there are 15,000 people living in their cars in LA. People are making a choice of what kind of car to buy because they know they're going to be living in their car because they can't afford rent.
Wow. Wow. Well, Andy, you did lose your leg, and we hear some of the epidemic proportions of what this is. Why did you decide to go into this ministry?
So I naturally should have gone into this type of ministry. My dad experienced homelessness from 4 to 17. His parents struggled with alcoholism, with violence, and they would sometimes decide, grass will be greener on the other side of the fence, and they would jump a freight car from Des Moines, Iowa, out to California. And my dad told a story of trying to hang on to his dad's neck, and his dad saying, "Carl, you're choking me," and my dad saying, "I don't have anything else to hold on to," while his dad jumped a freight car.
Wow.
And they would travel on that freight car out here, and he would live in a tent in Azusa Canyon or a garage in Compton or wherever they could lay their head. Things wouldn't work out. They'd take a freight car back to Des Moines, back and forth from 4 to 17, experiencing homelessness. So I should have naturally cared about people on the streets, but it actually took me coming to Biola, thinking I was going to be a great preacher, but passing out in my first speech in my speech class and realizing maybe I wasn't going to be the next Billy Graham. So I became a youth pastor. Then I became a Christian school teacher. and I was teaching in a Christian classroom, and the people in the classroom were picking on somebody they felt like was a loser.
Right.
Back in those days, you won't recognize these names, but they were saying loser and dweeb and nerd and back in the 80s. And I said, knock it off. Don't treat somebody like that in my classroom. But as I went home, I thought, you know, if a person who feels like a loser can't find love in this Christian classroom, where in this tough world are they ever going to find it? So I searched the scriptures for what to say to them the next day.
Yeah.
And I came across the scripture, Matthew 25, verses 31 and following, that at the end of time, Jesus and his angels are going to come, and he's going to gather the nations together, and he's going to separate the sheep from the goats. And to the sheep, he's going to say, come, take your inheritance prepared for you since the creation. For when I was hungry, you fed me, and when I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick and in prison, you came to visit me. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. Yeah. And the sheep are going to say, Lord, when did we ever do that? He's going to say, whenever you did it to the least of these, you did it unto me. And I translated to the kids, I said, whenever you did it unto the losers, you did it unto me. Yeah. And I gave that message 6 times to 6 different classes. Christian school, locked the door, they couldn't escape me. And they heard it once, each class heard it once. I heard it 6 times, that when you feed somebody who's hungry, it's like feeding Jesus himself. When you turn your back on somebody who's hungry, it's like turning your back on Jesus himself. When you say a hurting word to an already hurting person, theologians say I stretched it, but I believe that the way you treat another human being is the way that you're treating God. And if you say a hurting word to an already hurting person, you're saying a hurting word to Jesus himself. I went home and told my wife it was the best message I ever heard, and I should have taken notes on myself. And I knew I had changed their attitudes, right? But that was Friday. And that Sunday, I not only taught school all week, but I worked at a downtown parking ramp. And I'm the guy sitting there taking your ticket and your money. Yeah. And I'm getting ready to eat my sandwich and watching NFL football on a mini screen, Des Moines, Iowa, in the middle of winter, not working hard. And I heard this knock on the window, and I look up, and here's this man standing there, long dirty beard, long dirty coat, missing some teeth, sack of soda pop cans slung over his shoulder. And he said, sir, can I have your sandwich? And of course, what did I say?
Yes.
I said, I'm sorry, sir, but I need my sandwich. And his face drooped with disappointment. He disappeared into the darkness, and it hit me. I realized I had preached something 6 times on Friday, but I had failed to practice what I preached. Wow. So I hoped and prayed for another chance. I found him on the street a few weeks later, fed him dinner, and out of nowhere, I never told this story, but out of nowhere, my missions pastor came to me and said, Andy, there's a job downtown at the rescue mission. I think you should apply. Wow. And I reluctantly went to apply for the job, but when I saw what was happening, I said, this is a chance to practice what I preached. And my heart was completely transformed. I used to look through people digging out of the dumpster for their food like they were invisible. Right. And now I absolutely feel their pain. I feel great empathy. People say that I'm mentally ill in my passion for people devastated by homelessness. I used to say people experiencing homelessness, but then a lady wrote me last week and said, that's like saying somebody experiencing cancer. And I realized she's right. People devastated by homelessness. I don't say the homeless. I don't want to give somebody a permanent name when they're in a temporary situation. I don't want to sum them up by their current condition. There's so much more than that. There's somebody's aunt or uncle, brother or sister, mom or dad, somebody's precious baby they once held in their arms and the world revolved around them. And that's the attitude we should have toward people who are struggling on the street. They are a precious human being made in the image of God, somebody's baby that the world used to revolve around, and we need to treat them like that.
Wow. So you've been doing this for over 3 decades now.
Yeah.
And what keeps you going? I know a lot of people get burnt out in their ministry to people who are devastated by homelessness, but what keeps you going?
Well, I get wiped out, but I just cry my way home, and I was going to warn them about my size of my head and these ear things not working. But as long as I can get some rest overnight, God renews and refreshes me and takes me back again. I would say that the last 3 months have been my most challenging season ever in my career, but I've come out the other side, and and plan on several more. And I won't rest until LA realizes you cannot be a city of angels and leave precious human beings, especially children, on the streets.
Yeah. So tell us more about women and children in particular. I know that the demographic for women and children is just skyrocketing, the homeless population.
Yes.
Tell us more about what are they experiencing, what are their needs in particular?
So we used to have more men than women at the mission. And just in the last 3 years, women coming to our door and families with children coming to our door have skyrocketed. So the other night, we had 1,549 people under both our roofs at Hope Gardens and Union Rescue Mission. And that represents like 950 women and children and maybe 450 to 500 men. And women are escaping from domestic abuse. Single women their rents are being raised to the point where they cannot live there anymore. And women on the streets are prey to predators. And children on the streets are absolutely overwhelmed, devastated. They drop 2 years behind in school. They're sick like 6 times more often. My dad, his last year on the face of the earth, his last week on the face of the earth, all he could talk about was being a homeless teenager and the embarrassment and shame and pain of that. That's all he wanted to talk about. He'd held it in for years, but it's overwhelming to people mentally, socially, economically, educationally, and we as a society we are going to suffer. So the other day I finally said, neighbors are stopping the city. The city was told build 60 structures, 4 in each district, in 15 districts. They said, do what Union Rescue Mission is doing. Put this sprung.com, look it up. It's a tent, but it's not. It's permanent for 120 ladies. The experts told the city, do 60 of these, 4 in each district, 15 districts, and you'll get 13,000 people off the streets immediately, right? So the city is going to do 15, 1 in each district. That was over a year ago. So far, 1 out of 15 has been put up for 45 people. We'll never get there at that rate. We need to treat it like the disaster that it is and take immediate steps to go all out, not to leave people on the streets. So my point is, neighbors are fighting this horribly. You're like, don't do it. Put them out in the Death Valley and let them build a bridge back. That's the kind of things that neighbors are saying. But what they don't realize is, if we don't even care about the people on the streets, if we even care about our own health, we won't leave people on the streets. We are setting ourselves up for a disaster. It's sad that I have to give that argument, but maybe we've become so selfish in LA that that's the argument I have to give, because I want to tell you, LA puts a roof over 25% of people devastated by homelessness. We leave 75% on the streets. New York City puts a roof over 96%. They have more people experiencing homelessness. They have 81,000 people experiencing homelessness, but they put a roof over 96%, and they're frustrated and working hard to get the other 4% under a roof. And that's the kind of heart change or law change. New York did it through a law. That may be the only next step, is to just make a law that you cannot leave somebody on the streets. In New York, if it's 32 degrees or lower, they make you come in off the streets. That's the kind of maybe heart change or law. I was hoping we'd get there through heart change, but it may take the law.
We're going to answer some questions from our student audience. Here we go. Here's the first question. Do you see any solution to the epic of homelessness? What would you have to change to help solve this problem?
So we would need courageous leadership from the politicians who don't just let neighborhood people say, not in my backyard. We would tell everybody, you have to, carry your fair share. Why would you leave people in the alleys and in the streets or on your sidewalks of your neighborhood when you could actually build a roof over their heads and have accountability and case management? So I would say we need to listen to that plan the Urban Land Institute gave us of 60 structures, 4 in each district, 15 districts, 6-month stays, get 13,000 people off the streets immediately. I'd like to say 100 and get, more off the streets, 20,000 this year off the streets. And then we've got to quit thinking about large houses, right? We've got to quit thinking about even the HUD program right now, a $500,000 per unit solution to homelessness. We will never get there at $500,000 per unit. So we need to think innovative, efficient, 3D printed concrete homes that are 660 square feet, bathroom, kitchen, and you can build them in 24 to 48 hours for $10,000. Let's say in LA it might be $30,000 because of the cost of land, but we need to think completely differently. And we need to think in a way that says we will not leave a precious human being on the streets even for one night. I've spent one night like every year on the streets, and I can tell you I don't sleep, right? I'm on guard, but you can't do that forever and keep your right mind. And if you fall asleep, you're going to be brutally beaten, robbed, raped, and you will never recover, right? It's devastating to the soul for somebody to experience those events, and so we've got to think in a way we're not going to leave human beings on the streets, and we need to do whatever it takes, and we need to use great young minds to figure this out. We can't keep doing what we've been doing.
Yeah, thank you for that. Here's another question. Do you feel like the churches around the LA area are properly responding to the homeless population by seeking to help and provide for them?
I wish I could say yes, but I can't, because since there's 15,000 people living in cars, the city, and we all helped convince them to make safe parking so that at least you could park your car at night in a safe place and have showers and restrooms, right? Yeah. When they put out the RFP, for request for proposals from churches, only one church in all of LA County took them up on having a safe parking program in their parking lot. Seattle, tons of churches have participated. Other cities, tons of churches. But in LA, only one church has taken them up on the safe parking program. Just think what a church could do. Just come park in our parking lot at night, folks. Take a shower, clean up, and use the restrooms in a healthy way, and we'll give you case management and help you find housing. Just think of the difference. Even if every church in LA took one family and offered that, think of the impact, but we haven't done it.
Wow. Here's another question. What does taking care of the medical issues for these homeless people look like? Do you have clinics? Do you need help in this area?
Yes, we have a clinic at the Mission. They've kept me alive over the last few years, as well as all of our guests. But think about being left out in the weather, right? And think about the illnesses that could come. Think about fleas and typhus. Think about a particular kind of TB found only in the world that's on Skid Row. Think about the beatings that happen. Think about not being able to afford medicine for your diabetes. So we had a guy get dumped by a retirement home, convalescent home. He got dumped in his wheelchair at the Mission. He didn't have his insulin. He didn't have his sugar checker. He couldn't sleep in a normal bunk. And I had to give him my insulin and my needles and my sugar checker in order to even keep him alive. Wow. People are living on the streets of Skid Row without the necessary medicine. And people are making choices. Do I pay rent or do I take my medicine? So full range of medical needs, and many clinics are needed. Many nursing students and doctors need to care. I have cost area hospitals $30 million for dumping patients on the streets of Skid Row by making a big deal of it in the news and reporting it to the city attorney. And I did that right as I needed a quadruple bypass and a kidney transplant. So I was worried how the hospitals were going to react to me, but fortunately my wife's hospital took care of me, and I just taught Wichita yesterday because they're experiencing hospital dumping, and they didn't know what to do. They were going to just create recuperative care, and that's what many missions do. Recuperative care, a safe place for people to come when they're sick and experiencing sickness while they're on the streets. But I think it's a both-and approach. It's holding the hospitals accountable, or maybe going to them early and say, hey, if you'll give us some funds, we'll set up recuperative care, and we won't sue you when you dump your patients.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. This is so sobering. I just want to thank you for sharing.
So yeah, let me lighten it. I just want to lighten the mood a little bit. So if you enjoy being able to wear your hair like you do at Biola, and you like wearing the clothes that you wear, and you like not having curfew, I'm the guy that caused that. Because 1976, you had to wear dress pants and dress shirts. I wore dress pants and rugby shirts. And I wore my hair out long, got called in a lot for it. And I won't tell you why your curfew dropped, but I did cause that. So I just want you to know that I have helped be a changer at Biola 42 years ago.
But see, like, I just got to recognize that kind of creativity to change certain rules. That's something you're trying to fight for even now in downtown LA. Yeah, great. Here's another question. What would you recommend us as college students to do to help decrease homelessness in LA?
Speak up. You know, you've heard the message. We can't be a city that allows this kind of abuse of people who are struggling. So I was at the city council the other day speaking up, and I told them of a story. 26-year-old woman ran into our mission naked, beaten, and raped. And we clothed her, and we called the medics, and we called the police. Less than a week later, a 26-year-old woman, beaten, raped, naked, ran into the LAPD lobby. And I stood up at the city council and I said, you know, my heart won't let me live in a city where that's the reality. And I said, you know, could you do me a favor? This is directed right at the mayor. I said, could you not hold any more press conferences and pat yourself on the back until we've made a significant change? And that came a week after we'd put up this first shelter, right? In a year, we put up the first one out of 15 for 45 people, not 100. And they held a big press conference and patted themselves on the back. And I just wanted to sober them up a little bit. So speaking up pays, and you know, don't tolerate living in a city where this kind of stuff is the reality. You guys can speak up and change it. And you can get involved like you're doing. Get involved, come visit Union Rescue Mission. Help out. I had a gentleman approach me before we started. I think he might be the CEO of Union Rescue Mission, you know, in a few years.
Let's make that happen.
Yeah, I'm going to work to make that happen.
All right. Here's another question. Could you comment on the relationship of drug and alcohol abuse to homelessness, and what some effective strategies might be to address this relationship?
So I don't know what's going on, but alcohol and drug abuse are so much worse now than they were even 10 years ago. And I don't know if it's the reality of the difficulty in life when you're godless, or you know, the weight of sin in our society that's gaining up on us. But 10 years ago, I could honestly tell neighbors that were worried about our Hope Gardens Family Center that only 12 to 17% of the families use drugs. Now it's over 50% of the families who come to us are using drugs. Now it's 70% of the guys who come to us are mentally ill. Drug and alcohol addiction, mental health is skyrocketing among people. But I also want to say, if you leave people on the streets, the only way to cope is to try to escape. So people on Skid Row last year were using spice. It's like brake fluid and Raid and mixed in with synthetic marijuana, and they'd smoke it, and you think, why would you smoke this stuff that makes you go into a seizure for 6 hours and get hauled away to the hospital nearly dead.
Wow.
But they're just trying to escape the hellish reality of Skid Row for any amount of time in order to escape their situation. So as long as we leave people on the streets, the drug use and the mental health issues will go up, because you can't stay on the streets and keep your mental health.
Yeah.
And if you suffer enough, like women tell me, even in abusive relationships, they would start to use to escape their reality. So we need to address the homelessness, or we will never address the mental health and drug addiction.
Wow. Wow. Well, Andy, the last question we always ask our guests is, what are some of the biblical principles that help shape your thoughts as you shared in this chapel today?
So you heard the one, that the way you treat another human being is the way that you're treating Jesus himself. Yeah. And that's over and over in Scripture. The other one that hit me, a guy came into my office, and he told me everything wrong he'd ever done, right? And I looked down on him at the time. A few days later, I got a call from the police, and Mike was going to end his life, and he had chained his arm to his door, and he had a piece of glass up to his throat, and he was going to cut his throat. And the police, instead of trying to arrest him, sent me in to talk to him, and I went and talked to him, and I got him to drop the glass, and I took him back to my office, and he said, I want help. I want to go to Teen Challenge. So I took him to the hospital to get an AIDS test to get qualified for Teen Challenge. And we're sitting there, and he starts telling me, Andy, if I just had a woman, I'd be okay. And I looked at his arms, and he had, "I love you, Mary," tattooed, and "I love you, Sue," and "I love you, Betty." And he had these tattoos of women all over his arms. And for a moment, I thought, what woman in the world would love you? I didn't say it. I just thought, what woman would love you, Mike? And then it hit me immediately, like, Andy, I love Mike as much as I love you.
Wow.
Right? And it's Romans 5:8. When we were at our worst, right? Think about it, when I was at my worst, when you were at your worst, when we were absolutely at our worst, Christ died for us. Christ loved us. And when we've been singing in heaven's choir for 1,000 years, he won't love us any more than he loves us when we were at our worst. And that's the way we need to approach people. Christ loves them when they're at their worst. We as believers, if we are going to reflect our Savior, we're going to love people when they're absolutely at their worst. We need to have an unconditional love like God has for us. That's probably what has shaped me more than anything else.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.